Picture this, November 1930, the raw, unforgiving vastness of the Canadian Arctic, a place where survival hinges on instinct and community. A fur trapper, Joe LaBelle, is nearing the end of an arduous trek. He's bone-weary, hungry, and his mind is fixed on the small Inuit village nestled by Anjikuni Lake, a familiar stop, a beacon of life in this frozen wilderness. He's traded with them before, shared stories, found respite from the relentless cold. But as LaBelle trudges closer, an unnatural silence begins to settle. No welcoming smoke curls from the chimneys. No dogs bark a greeting. No distant laughter carries on the wind. Just the relentless, biting wind, and a quiet so profound it feels like a physical weight pressing down on him. He calls out, his voice swallowed instantly by the vast emptiness. Nothing. He pushes aside the caribou hide flap of the first hut, and what he finds inside grips him with a chill far deeper than the Arctic winter itself. The meager fire in the hearth still glows, its embers clinging to a warmth no one remained to claim. A sealskin coat, half mended, lay on the floor, a needle still threaded, as if its owner had simply vanished in mid-stitch. And rifles, precious, life-sustaining rifles, propped carelessly against the wall, utterly untouched. In a land where a rifle was a lifeline, this wasn't just unusual, it was an act of unthinkable abandonment. But where was everyone? Where were the 24 or so souls, men, women, children, who called this remote outpost home? There wasn't a single track leading away into the fresh snow. No footprints. No sign of struggle. Just the relentless, biting wind and a quiet so profound it feels like a physical weight pressing down on him. This is the enduring, chilling mystery of Anjikuni, a place where an entire community simply ceased to be, swallowed by the vast, silent north, leaving behind a riddle that has defied every attempt at explanation and haunted investigators for generations. Joe LaBelle was a hardened man of the North, accustomed to its brutal caprices. Yet what unfolded before him at Anjikuni was unlike anything he had ever witnessed. His raw account painted a scene of immediate, almost instantaneous departure. The village, as if in a single breath, had simply exhaled its inhabitants. As he moved through the abandoned shelters, a creeping dread began to take hold. No blood, no signs of a struggle, no indication of violence. It was too clean, too silent. But then, a more disturbing discovery. Just outside the village perimeter, a team of sled dogs, vital for travel and survival, found starved to death, inexplicably buried beneath snowdrifts. And further unsettling, a nearby cairn, a traditional stone grave marker, appeared to have been disturbed. The stones were neatly restacked, yes, but the body it once guarded was gone. Shaken to his core, LaBelle wasted no time. He immediately embarked on the arduous journey to the nearest telegraph office, compelled to report his horrifying discovery to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. What followed was an investigation that, for all its efforts, yielded precisely nothing. The RCMP searched, meticulously combing the desolate landscape, but the truth of Anjikuni remained elusive. No bodies, no definitive explanation. The vast, indifferent Arctic simply seemed to have absorbed an entire community without a single trace. But LaBelle's account and the subsequent inconclusive police report were just the beginning of this chilling tale. The story truly took root when other trappers in the region began reporting unsettling phenomena. Strange blue lights pulsating and shifting in the sky directly above the village around the very time of the vanishing. Was it a trick of the aurora borealis warped by fear in an isolated mind? Or something far, far more profound? But this isn't merely local legend. The story gained widespread public attention thanks to journalist Emmett F. Kelleher, whose 1930 article in the Halifax Herald, chillingly titled "Vanished Eskimo Tribe Gives Arctic Mystery," brought the bewildering details to a national audience. It was Kelleher's sensationalized account that first injected the UFO angle, igniting a public fascination that would endure for generations. The enigma of Anjikuni Lake wasn't just an isolated incident. It was swiftly becoming a modern-day legend, blurring the stark reality of a true disappearance with the chilling whispers of the paranormal. So what exactly are we dealing with here when we talk about the Anjikuni Lake mystery? At its heart, it's the reported disappearance, in November of 1930, of an entire Inuit village, estimated at around 25 to 30 people, near Anjikuni Lake, a staggeringly remote location in Nunavut, Canada. This was a community living on the very edge of human habitation, in an incredibly harsh environment, utterly reliant on traditional hunting and trapping to survive. The crucial narrative hinges on the testimony of fur trapper Joe LaBelle, the first outsider to stumble upon the desolate settlement. His account painted a picture of unsettling normalcy within the empty huts, food still warm, personal effects untouched, and critically, essential hunting rifles left behind, all juxtaposed against the terrifying, inexplicable absence of any human life. To deepen the enigma, there were those later reports of strange blue lights seen in the sky around the time the village vanished. Was it a trick of the aurora borealis, warped by fear in an isolated mind? Or something far, far more profound? The Royal Canadian Mounted Police launched an investigation as best they could in such a desolate reach of the world. But their findings, officially, nothing. No traces, no bodies, just a vast, gaping question mark where an entire community once stood. This lack of a concrete explanation, amplified by the sensationalized media coverage that followed, firmly cemented Anjikuni Lake's place in the pantheon of unexplained phenomena, earning it the ominous moniker, Canada's Bermuda Triangle. It remains a chilling, open-ended cold case, a mass disappearance without a single, definitive answer. The sheer void left by the Anjikuni disappearance has, over the decades, been filled with a barrage of theories, each attempting to grapple with the utter inexplicability of the event. Perhaps the most chilling explanation takes us far beyond Earth: alien abduction. Advocates for this theory latch on to the reported strange blue lights in the sky, phenomena described as unlike any natural occurrence witnessed by LaBelle and other trappers in the vicinity. For UFO researchers, this immediately screams extraterrestrial intervention, a swift, silent removal of an entire population without leaving a single trace on the ground. Jerome Clark, a prominent UFO researcher and author of the UFO Encyclopedia, points out that such sightings in remote, isolated areas were in fact not uncommon during that era, lending a strange historical context to the claims. Even today, as late as 2025, social media buzz continues to revive this theory, with users claiming similar bizarre lights observed over Nunavut, keeping the cosmic mystery very much alive. But yet the skeptic in us demands a more grounded perspective. Could these reported lights simply have been natural atmospheric occurrences? Perhaps rare forms of ball lightning or an unusually vibrant aurora display, misinterpreted by isolated individuals, their minds perhaps already strained by the harsh environment and the traumatic discovery. And the abduction narrative itself, critics argue, may have been dramatically amplified and embellished by early media reports, simply because a more fantastical story sells more newspapers. Crucially, there's no tangible physical proof. No debris, no definitive evidence of a landing, nothing beyond eyewitness accounts. Then we delve into the ancestral, the spiritual, supernatural forces or Inuit folklore. Inuit oral traditions are rich with powerful spirits and mythical beings, from the Kalapilut, sea creatures said to lure and abduct humans, to the Tornit, giant, ancient beings that once roamed the land. Some speculate that the village was taken by such entities, an ancient force asserting its dominance over the land, a raw manifestation of the untamed Arctic wilderness. As anthropologist Dr. Susan Rowley notes, Inuit folklore often explains sudden disappearances as spiritual interventions, blending cultural beliefs with real events. These stories, while not offering direct provable evidence, undeniably add a profound cultural and unsettling layer to the mystery, connecting it to a deep indigenous understanding of the world. But again, a pragmatic lens reveals that folklore, while incredibly rich and culturally vital, often serves as a framework to explain the unexplainable after an event has transpired. These tales, passed down through generations, may have been retroactively applied to the Anjikuni disappearance, providing a culturally relevant and emotionally resonant explanation for a baffling tragedy, rather than being direct accounts of what truly happened. There's no historical corroboration directly linking specific folklore events to this particular village's vanishing. A far darker, yet perhaps more grounded theory proposes mass murder, or even a cover-up. What if this wasn't an otherworldly event, but something far more brutal and human? Some theorize a rogue trapper, a rival group, or even government agents, perhaps during a botched interaction, massacred the villagers, and then meticulously concealed every shred of evidence. The discovery of the starved sled dogs, found inexplicably buried, along with the disturbed grave and its missing body, are cited as potential evidence of a staged scene, an elaborate misdirection designed to mislead any investigators. True crime author Brian Dunning from his Skeptoid podcast highlights that in the 1930s, particularly in such remote territories, countless crimes went unsolved simply due to severely limited investigative resources. The initial vagueness of RCMP records, or even the lack of direct primary documents regarding a mass vanishing, leads some to suspect a deliberate suppression of information. Yet, this theory faces significant, almost insurmountable challenges. The utter, chilling absence of blood, weapons, or any forensic evidence whatsoever strains credulity. A large-scale murder and subsequent cover-up in such a remote, harsh environment would be a monumental logistical feat, almost impossible to execute without leaving some trace, some sign of struggle or violence. The unnerving cleanliness of the scene contradicts the brutality implied by such an act. Perhaps the most pragmatic, if still incomplete, explanation leans towards environmental factors or a sudden survival migration. The Arctic, as we know, is notoriously unforgiving. Blizzards can materialize from nowhere, food shortages can strike without warning, or rapid environmental changes could have forced the villagers into an immediate, desperate flight for safety or sustenance. Hypothermia, disorientation, or even rapid, heavy snowfall could easily account for the puzzling lack of footprints leading away from the village. Arctic historian Dr. Ken McCougan, author of Fatal Passage, states quite clearly that sudden migrations were common among Inuit groups facing starvation or extreme weather. However, even McCougan concedes a critical point. Leaving behind essential rifles, as LaBelle reported, would be highly unusual for any group facing a life-or-death survival crisis. This theory, while logical on the surface, struggles to explain the untouched food still warming on the fire. If a sudden, life-threatening emergency forced them out, why leave a perfectly good, warm meal? And why decades later have no survivors or their descendants ever appeared in nearby communities, no desperate tales of a mass exodus confirmed? The sheer suddenness of the abandonment, combined with the lack of any discernible outward migration signs, remains a significant hurdle for this otherwise plausible explanation. Finally, we confront a cynical yet unsettling possibility that the entire story is lost in exaggeration, or even a deliberate hoax. Some researchers, notably Brian Dunning of the Skeptoid podcast, contend that the Anjikuni story, as it's largely known today, is simply a grand embellishment, growing from a far smaller, less mysterious incident, or perhaps a complete fabrication altogether. Dunning suggests that journalist Emmett Kelleher, known for his penchant for sensationalized reporting, may have taken a mere fragment of a story, a barroom tall tale from LaBelle, and inflated it into a dramatic, sweeping mystery. The RCMP's official stance over the years has been that they hold no record of such a widespread disappearance, and some early RCMP investigations in 1931 reportedly concluded that Kelleher's initial report was nothing more than a sensationalized hoax. Even the very existence of a permanent named village at that exact location in 1930 has been questioned by some. Yet, to entirely dismiss Joe LaBelle's incredibly detailed eyewitness account and the consistent reports of strange lights from multiple independent witnesses seems almost too convenient. It feels like an attempt to erase a persistent kernel of truth that may lie buried beneath layers of sensationalism and time. While exaggeration is certainly plausible, dismissing the entire narrative as a complete hoax feels like a stretch for a story that has captivated imaginations and haunted investigators for nearly a century. The core mystery, that something profoundly unusual happened at Anjikuni, refuses to be entirely erased by skepticism alone. Anjikuni Lake, a name that echoes in the dark corners of Canadian history, a chilling testament to the unknown. Was it a visitation from beyond the stars, the ancient, fearsome wrath of a spirit, a meticulously concealed human atrocity, a desperate, tragic flight against nature's fury, or simply a grand fabrication that spiraled into legend? For nearly a century, this remote corner of the Canadian Arctic has held its secrets close, stubbornly defying every attempt to fully unravel its chilling enigma. We as humans are driven to search for answers, for logical conclusions, for the satisfying click of a puzzle piece falling perfectly into place. But some mysteries, perhaps, are not meant to be solved. They exist at the very fringes of our understanding, forcing us to confront the profound, unsettling limits of our own knowledge and control over reality. What does it truly mean when an entire community simply ceases to be? What unseen forces move beneath the seemingly ordered surface of our world? And how much of what we desperately cling to as truth is simply a comforting story we tell ourselves to make sense of a terrifying, inexplicable silence? The case of Anjikuni Lake lingers, not merely as a historical footnote, but a chilling, profound reminder that sometimes the most terrifying truths are the ones we can never quite explain. They exist in the shadows, waiting, watching, and perhaps they're still out there in the cold, silent expanse, beckoning us to wonder what else has the North swallowed whole.